How you guys doing? It's great to meet you all. Um, so I'll give you a little story about me and how I came here, just so we can give you guys some context for what this talk is going to be about. So, by training, I'm a internal medicine physician. So that basically means I'm the type of doctor that you would see if you were to come into the hospital and you needed to be admitted for anything, pneumonia, surgery, whatever it was. I'd be the doctor who takes care of you. But I always was interested in this idea of what keeps people well. That's actually why I went to medical school. And when you get to medical school, they actually teach you what to do when people are sick. And that's valuable, but it's not, it's only part of the story. The real question is, how do you keep people from getting sick in the first place? So I spent a lot of time training outside of medical school so that I could understand how the body works on a cellular level. So, not just, what your symptoms are and what disease you have or the diagnosis of that disease, but really what actually keeps you moving. What's the thing that keeps you active and aging well? And so over the past 10 years, thank you, KFU. Over the past 10 years, I've really honed into really thinking about women's health, particularly around perimenopause and menopause and hormones and what role hormones play in your health. And so all of these things are actually really important as it pertains to hydration. And we'll talk a little bit about how that all applies. But when I thought about what I wanted to talk about, it's always about, how do we heal from the inside, right? And when we talk about hydration, most times we're thinking about, are we getting enough water in the day? And that's important, but really, I'm going to give you guys, hopefully over the course of this talk, how do you nourish your cells? And your cells are the things that help us produce energy. It's the places where we produce our hormones. It's how we detoxify, by getting the fluid that we're actually drinking into our actual bodies, into the cells, cellular structure, so that we can function the way that we want to. So I'm going to go through a couple of slides, but if you do have questions while I'm talking, please interrupt me, let me know, because I want to make sure that you guys are engaged. So let's jump in. I know Chef B told me what you guys kind of talked about. So if I do some repetition, just remember repetition is a positive thing. So, all right, so this is me, my little story here. Board certified in internal medicine, but I practice functional medicine. I know some of you guys may not know what that means. That just means lifestyle medicine. It's actually cellular medicine, is how do you heal from the inside out. I'm also integrative and holistic medicine trained. I have a practice here in Atlanta, and I've been married for, now I need to update this, 17 years. Lord. We got 3 little children, and my specialty is in hormones and longevity. So how do you live healthier for longer? So the goals of this talk, we've kind of talked about it, the science of hydration on a cellular level. What does that actually mean? Practical ways to know how you're hydrated. So how do you tell whether or not you're hydrated? I'm sure you guys have gone over some of that. And then creative rituals and recipes beyond plain water. So what I hope is that I'm going to actually tell you what I do. I'm going to tell you what I tell my patients, but I'm also going to show you some of the things that I do to make sure that I'm nourishing myself at a cellular level. And then tools you can use to assess your hydration, but also to optimize your hydration. So basically, all hydration means at a cellular level is whether or not your cells are dehydrated. So it's one thing to just pour water into you, but if that water doesn't get into the cells, then you're not actually hydrated. You're just waterlogged. You can be edematous or inflamed. So what we want to make sure is that fluid is getting into the cells. So when you get fluids into the cells, what you're actually doing is you're boosting your metabolism, you're boosting your energy. But if you're just drinking water and that water is not going into your cells, and there's a lot of reasons why it might not go into your cells, then you may become swollen. It's what we call edema. You may notice that you're puffy. You may notice that you feel bloated. You may feel more dehydrated, like you haven't been drinking. So it's that sense that I've been drinking all this water, or I think I'm drinking a lot of water, but actually I don't feel it anywhere. And obviously the reason this matters on a cellular level is because obviously we are mostly water, but as we get older, we get chronically dehydrated. Our bodies just start to not hold water in our cells as well. And so we have to become more intentional about it. Like I told you before, water is essential to hormone balance. So, and your sex hormones, but also your metabolic hormones. So if you're not hydrated, then, and you're feeling like I'm fatigued, I've got brain fog, I've got all of this, aches and pains, it may be an issue with your hydration. Your digestive issues. So most of the women I see who come into the office, even though they're coming to me for hormones, they oftentimes are also having digestive issues. And so we have to address those at the same time. And then this one is actually near and dear to my heart, the skin and how you age. So we don't just want to feel better as we get older, but we also want to look better. And so I do have some tricks up my sleeve for that as well to talk about. So we talked a little bit, and I'm just going to give you some of this language that we use to talk about cellular hydration. So there's water that's inside the cell and water that's outside of the cell. The water that's inside of the cell is the one that gives you to your mitochondria, which is the energy producing cells. It's the part that helps you repair. And when we can actually test this, we actually do test this in the office. And I'm going to show you a report. I think I put it in here. Yeah, so I'm just going to show you this report that we do in our office. You can't see all the details of it, but what this report does, it's a body scan. If you've never had a body scan, it's actually one things I think everybody should do on a regular basis. It's a way of actually standing on a scale, and it will tell you, what your weight is, but then it will tell you all the compartments that make up that weight. So for example, if you, in this case, this person is 145 pounds, but the she is 84 pounds of water, all right, really 84.9, so 85 pounds of water. And so the rest of her, it's her fat-free mass, so that's her bone and her skeletal muscle. So when you put all of that together, that's where you get 145. And then we can break it up even further. We can see how much of it is in the cells and then how much is outside of the cells. Again, we use that word intracellular water versus extracellular. And we like this ratio to be 3-2. So you want to have more water in the cells than outside. If you have more water outside of the cells, then that's when you start to see swelling and edema and inflammation. The body scan also lets me know how much inflammation might be in the body as it relates to your hydration status, and we call that a phase angle. So we actually can measure this. Now, this test, just to be complete transparency, it's not a test that actually looks for dehydration. So it doesn't tell me, if you come in and do this scan, I can say, oh, you're dehydrated today. It's really something that we look at over time to see how well your body is hydrated, how much muscle you have, how much fat you have. So it's a way to assess your overall health, but it's just one of those things that actually can allow us to kind of look at each compartment separately and then make some decisions based off of that. Interested to know if anybody's ever had a body composition. If so, put it in the chat so I just know anybody who, and let me know if you're interested in having one. What helps you actually get water into the cells? So this is where the rubber meets the road. So how do you get actually hydrated? It's really down to what we call minerals, right? So if you've ever heard of, electrolytes are just minerals that have a charge on them. And that charge allows water to be pulled into your bloodstream and then pulled into the cells. So if you're just drinking water, but you don't have good minerals, then you are not getting hydrated at the cellular level. See a few people interested in having a scan. That's great. We'll talk a little bit about that if you guys are more interested at the end. But also, it's not just the minerals, it's also the amount of protein you have in your body. So I often see people in the hospital when they're very, very sick, they can actually swell up because they don't have protein, enough protein. They're not eating enough protein, and that causes fluid to actually leak out of the cells into your tissues. Healthy fats are also really important because the fats actually are the things that keep the water in the cells. All of your cells have fat around them. And so if you're not getting those good healthy fats, then you will actually dehydrate your cells. So it's super important. And I'm sure that Coach Chef B has talked about this over and over again, the power of nutrition as a way of hydration. And so it's not just about the water, it's about also getting these other factors in. And so we'll talk about how do you get this in. So let's talk a little bit before we get into how you get these in. Let's talk a little bit about the symptoms of poor cellular hydration. So again, things I see in the clinic on a regular basis, and more funnily, things I see in my household. So if my kids come to me at any point in time and they say they've got a headache, that they're tired, that they are having muscle cramps, if they've got a cold, I mean, it doesn't even matter what they tell me what their problem is. I'm always going to say, did you drink enough water? And did you put some electrolytes in it? We have electrolyte packets in my house, and that's our first step to anything. So a lot of the symptoms that you might be experiencing, could they be your hormones? Absolutely. Could it be that you've got some other medical issue going on? Absolutely. But if you haven't done hydration first, none of those other things matter. So we're going to start with hydration, particularly around things like fatigue and brain fog, dry skin, hair loss, dull hair, brittle nails, constipation. We talk about this a lot. A lot of people will say, drink more water, but really drink more water with electrolytes. Drink more, eat more foods that have fiber and electrolytes in them so that you can actually um, uh, um, have a normal digestive system. Muscle cramps and restless leg, puffiness or swelling. So this is one that most people get kind of confused. It's like, why would I get swollen if I'm dehydrated? If I'm swollen, that must mean I'm holding on to water. You're holding on to water extracellularly, outside of the cells, not inside the cells. So that's the difference. And the reasons why you might do that is maybe you're malnourished, maybe you've got a lot of inflammation going on. Those things will pull fluid out of your cells and into your tissues. We're going to talk about that, Lori. What electrolytes am I talking about? We're absolutely going to get to that. All right. So how do you know if your hydration is working? Number one, if you're feeling energetic, you're feeling without the brain fog, you're not having those other symptoms. But some more practical things, looking at your urine, making sure that it's a pale yellow, not clear. So clear is if you're clear every once in a while, it's fine. But if you're clear all day, some people drink way too much water. And in the hospital, I actually admit people who are like, the doctor told me to drink more water. I drank more water. And then you started to feel really bad. And that's because we can actually dilute our blood so much that it causes us problems. So when you're testing to see if you're drinking enough water, you want to be at a pale yellow, but not something where you're clear all day. If that's the case, back off a little bit. If you have a steady state of energy and you're not crashing, so a lot of people, particularly in menopause and perimenopause, you'll get that mid-afternoon slump. I think that I keep saying Coach B, Chef B was making a mention about the thirds. So really making sure that you're hydrating early in the morning can help prevent those midday crashes. I just finished a 5-day fast. I did literally, I finished it 2 days ago. And on that very first day, I noticed that my lips were starting to crack. And the thing that I realized is that even though I was drinking a lot of water, because I wasn't eating any foods, I wasn't hydrated. I was eating some foods as a part of this fast. It's something called the fasting mimicking diet. But I just thought it was so interesting as I was getting ready to do this talk. I was juggling down water, but my lips started to get chapped. My skin felt drier. And it was because I wasn't getting enough of the electrolytes along with the water. And then also doing something like an in-body scan or a body impedance analysis. So same amount of water, but different hydration status. So again, these aren't things that you haven't heard before, but I really want to drive home this idea that, let's say you're supposed to be getting 80 ounces of water, but you're eating, proteins, you're getting veggies, you're getting minerals, you're getting healthy fats. Well, that person is going to be well hydrated. That person is going to have good intracellular water. Their labs are going to be normal. They're going to feel great. But we have another person who's drinking that same 80 ounces, but they're eating processed foods. They're not getting enough protein. They're not drinking enough minerals. Then that person is going to have a totally different hydration status. So again, it's not just about drinking tons of water. The other thing we think about is that when you're eating tons of processed foods, those processed foods can oftentimes have things that will be quite dehydrating. Things like sugar or high sodium in foods. So being really cognizant of what you're drinking, but also what's coming around what you're drinking. What else are you doing with that water or that fluid that you're drinking? All right, so here's another thing that I get asked often, so I wanted to throw it in. So I know that most people know this, that you drink half your body weight in ounces. That's sort of the gold standard for how do you determine how much water you should drink. But what do you do if you're exercising? How about if you're out in the sun all day? How about if you go to the sauna? What if you're sick or have a fever? All of these things can actually dehydrate you, even if you're getting whatever your standard amount is, half your body weight in water. So then how do you know how much water to drink? Well, there are lots of different ways to do this, particularly around exercising or sweating. We tend to choose this sort of static number. I usually tell people drink 2 or 3 more ounces of water for every hour that you're doing intense exercising to compensate for your losses. You can also weigh yourself before and after your workout, and you can compensate that way because obviously your weight is going to go down as you get more dehydrated. If you're in the sauna, I always tell people if you're going to do sauna or you're going to be someplace in a lot of heat, you want to drink an additional 3 to 4 cups of water with electrolytes. And again, I'll tell you what those electrolytes are in just a moment. And then if you've got a fever, so this is super important because this is one of those things that where people really get sick and end up in the hospital is when they're sick, not getting enough fluids and not getting enough minerals. And I'm actually seeing a lot of this with my patients who are on GLP. So I don't know if anybody here is on semaglutide or tirzepatide or any of the weight loss medications, or if you have family or friends. Many of them may develop not really an illness, but maybe nausea and a little bit of vomiting or something like that. And the issue, the thing that brings them into the hospital is the fact that they're not hydrating well, and not just hydrating with water, but also adding the minerals in. And something else to really point out here is when I'm referring to adding these minerals, we want to do it in a way that isn't with a whole lot of sugar. So I'm not a big fan of like the Pedialytes or the Gatorades or the Powerades. I'll give you some better alternatives to that. And then also one of the things, particularly for women in perimenopause, one of the things I talk about all the time is getting enough protein, pushing your protein, eating enough protein, and eating as much protein as you possibly can. But if you're doing that, then you need to increase your water intake as well. So if you're doing that half your body weight in ounces, and you have any of these other things going on, you need to be adding at least 2 more glasses, if not 3 or 4 more glasses of water to your day. So the best way, and I know that Chef B had talked about this, so I won't belabor it, but if you split it up, right? So, and you come up with a ritual that you do. So, for example, first thing in the morning, or even before I go to bed, I put a big chug of water. I'll show you, it's right here. I have a big chug of water that I put by my bed. I put some electrolytes in it and or lemon or salt. And I put that by my bed when I go to bed. Now, I don't drink it before I go to bed because I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night peeing. But first thing in the morning is I drink before I even get out of bed. So I start my morning with water. We talked about sipping and not well, I didn't talk about it, but I know Chef B did. Sipping and not chugging your water. But then also eat your water. So, okay, so we're doing a half our body weight in ounces in water, but then we're also getting a lot of fluid from our food if we're eating vegetables and fruit. And not only are we getting the water when we're eating this, we're also getting the electrolytes and the nutrients, the minerals that come with that. So I really encourage people to make sure that you're eating foods that are heavy water content. Because that's where you're going to get your minerals from a natural source without having to always add something. And this just, again, takes me back to my 5-day fast. I wasn't eating fruits and vegetables, which is one of the reasons why I was getting more dehydrated. And then again, front loading. This is super common. I see most of I'd say 90 of the clients that I see in my practice have perimenopause or menopause. And one of the questions I ask everybody is, are you waking up in the middle of the night? And invariably, if they're coming to see me, the answer is yes. And before we even start talking about how do you treat that with hormones, which is actually quite easy to treat with hormones, the first question I ask is, what's the last time what time at night before bed do you have your last glass of water or your last liquid? And if it is too close, to bedtime, you're going to wake up. If you're drinking right at bedtime, you're going to wake up, your bladder is going to get overfilled, and you're going to wake up in the middle of the night. So before we even have to add any hormones, we can do that. That's a really simple lifestyle hack. All right, so what are the hydrating foods we're talking about? Just to give you guys some examples, things like cucumbers, celery, melons, you know it, you've seen them before. All of these fruits and vegetables that are mainly water. I had zucchini today. It was full of water. Strawberries, berries, soups and stews, smoothies with coconut water, with fresh coconut water, ideally. But all of these things, this is a way to just drink or eat your water. All right, so let's talk about some recipes and what sort of electrolytes are we talking about. So I'm actually going to come bring this down because I actually brought some examples of some things that I use. So the electrolytes are going to be things like sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, chloride. All of these have, I'm missing one, phosphate. All of these are what we call electrolytes. And so if you've ever seen any of these sort of like supplement new electrolyte packets, so this one, I have like so many of them in my house. I just started pulling things out. I've got all kinds of things. All of these are going to have things like sodium, potassium, the magnesium I talked about. This one has a lot more of other stuff. Let me see. This one, yes. So magnesium, chloride, sodium, potassium, trace minerals from seawater. This one also, same situation. We've got calcium, chloride, sodium, and then they've got potassium from several different sources in this one. So these are the types of electrolytes that I tend to add to my water, as opposed to doing things like a Powerade or something like that, because I also am going to choose electrolytes that don't also have added sugar and dyes and other things that can taint the experience of hydration. I also have this big thing of Himalayan sea salt. And so you can just simply, without having to spend $1.25 or so on one of these, is just take this and literally I put some of this right in my tea, right? And I know you may be thinking, well, isn't salt bad for you? Depends. For most people, it is not. For most people, if you are adding your own salt and you're not depending on salt by manufacturers, so that means things like eating soups that are out of cans or eating a lot of processed foods. If you're not doing that, then you need to be adding salt to your food, right? You need to be adding, you decide how much salt you're adding. You don't let the processors of these companies decide that. The other thing is that you're choosing salt that has these minerals in them, right? So this salt, this Himalayan pink salt, has magnesium. It has chloride and calcium in it naturally. So you're adding not just the sodium, but you're also adding in some of these other minerals to that. The other thing is the people who tend to have the hardest time with salt are going to be people who already have medical conditions that are problematic. And that's not necessarily high blood pressure, but things like congestive heart failure or kidney disease. So you want to talk to your provider about those sorts of things. If you are prone to swelling and all of those sorts of things, you definitely want to get it checked out. But for the vast majority of people who don't have those conditions, being able to add salt to your to the things that you're eating or drinking can actually be quite safe. So I also added in here for just some things that I really love to do. So for me, I always like to make getting nutrients into my diet a part of a routine or a ritual. And so I wanted to share some of the things that I actually do to my water to spice things up. So I have this thing called Power Water. It's sort of my signature thing. I talk about it all the time. I add in a green powder that has tons of nutrients in them. I add, it has vitamins, it has minerals, it has adaptogens, it has mushrooms, it has antioxidants. And then I add in collagen and creatine, which is also really important for your for perimenopausal and menopausal women, but it also provides high quality protein. And then I add some lemon for flavor. And that's what I typically will drink in this big jug I was just showing you guys. That's in one of these throughout the day. So that's my signature. I do that just about every day at least once. But then I have other ways of spicing it up because honestly, that can get kind of tired. I don't want to drink the same thing over and over again. So if you were to come to my kitchen, you would find all kinds of things that I make my water more interesting. So we talked about collagen, but there's a specific collagen that I like to use here that actually has in different nutrients for your skin, nails, and hair. I love to have antioxidants and then always a nice lemon to add some extra flavor. I also do these things with smoothies. Again, by adding a lot of these things into your water, you're not only getting the benefit of getting those half your body weight in water, but you're also avoiding things that have processed liquids, so juices and things of that nature, soda. You're doing something that's also interesting, but also very nourishing. I put ginger in just about everything, so that's a smoothie that I like to do. And then also, I do a lot of teas. Again, I think one of the misconceptions is that tea and coffee is dehydrating. It is, it can make you pee, but it's not more dehydrating. It's not like taking a water pill. You're actually going to retain more water from what you're drinking out of a coffee or a tea than you're going to lose from the diuretic or the diuretic effect of it. But it's not always my go-to. I do make sure that if I'm drinking, I don't drink coffee, but if I am drinking like a green tea or something that has that diuretic effect in it, that I'm also drinking a lot of herbal teas. Um, and then also mineral broth. So I actually make this, and I'm sure Chef B has a great recipe for this, but making like either a bone broth, if you do meat. As a matter of fact, I oftentimes I'm not vegan. Um, I do eat meat. I eat fish. However, it's not my main thing. And so oftentimes the only meat that I may get or animal may come from my bone broth just because of all of the nutrients and the minerals that can be found in the bone, the marrow. But then adding things like seaweed and other greens to that would also be a great mineral way of getting a great way of getting foods that are support you in that way. Then some other things to add to your water or your liquids, again, to make things interesting. Again, I showed you guys some of my electrolyte powders, but adaptogens. So this is also really great for my perimenopausal women. Adaptogens are things that help us deal with stress. The things like ashwagandha, rhodiola, or reishi. I do use a coffee, but whenever I do coffee, it's one that has a mushroom blend in it, which is reishi mushroom. And then whenever I do smoothies, I always add in some sort of adaptogen. Um, so the last thing I'll just say is that hydration is not just about drinking more water. It's about drinking water with electrolytes and nutrients. It's about layering these things in, but it's not even just about the water. It's about having enough protein, healthy proteins, and healthy fats. And it's really about working it into your day in a way that's interesting, in a way that also adds other nutrients into your day without it just being plain old water. Because if you want to really benefit, if you want this hydration to really benefit you throughout your body, you want to kind of think about hydrating in a multi-level way to get to those cellular hydrations. So start small. you can start just by adding some salt to your water. You don't have to get fancy with it. You think about you choosing things in your meal that foods that are really hydrating, that have lots of water in them, that come with the minerals naturally, and then build your own hydration ritual. I am a really big fan of creating rituals. I have a sleep ritual, I have a hydration ritual, I have a detox ritual, I got a fasting ritual, because these are things that make it fun and interesting, so that it's not just boring, drink half your body weight in water. So that's where I'm going to close out. I'd love to take some questions. I covered a lot of topics. If you are interested in working with me, I'm going to leave this up. That's just a QR code to my website. If you're interested in learning more about me and the work that I do, before I forget, I just also want to say that I have a group coming up that we talk about all these things. It's called the Black Women's Guide to Health, Hormones, and Longevity. That's coming up in 2 weeks. So I am in the planning phases of that. So if you're interested in something like that, let me know and I will share that information as well. I also have a master class on hormones and why Black women are so exhausted, and what that has to do with your hormones, things that our grandparents did not tell us. That's also next week. So if you're interested in coming to that, I'd love to see you guys. So I'm here for questions. Please feel free. Please feel free to ask away.
Before you start asking questions, thank you, Dr. Peoples. That was amazing. Short, sweet, but like powerful. Amazing, amazing, amazing. We do have some people who are interested in the program. So I just dropped the link to those, all of her links, all of your links. Okay, guys. So you guys can grab those links and follow up with Dr. Peoples about whatever you want to follow up with. If you want to do the scan, if you want to do the coaching program, because that's in 2 weeks. Also, tell them about the master class, because she has a master class next Tuesday. Now we do have our call next Tuesday, but
Oh, it's at noon. So
oh,
I
it's
have
at noon. Okay, good.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's two. We have one at noon and one at 6:30. I'll be doing it twice. It's all in preparation for the Black Women's Guide that's coming up. But yeah, but I also have a lot of free resources. So if you go to my website, I have a whole YouTube page, I have an Instagram, I have a closed Facebook group where that's where I have all my chit chat with everybody about all the things I do in my life, that are related to health, hormones, and longevity. So there are plenty of ways to connect with me, but
Yeah.
I want to make sure that if you guys have any questions as it pertains to hydration, and anything that I talked about, that I'm available to answer those questions. So I'd love to hear any questions you guys have.
I have the first question. How much salt do you add to whatever beverage you're adding? Is it just a pinch, a teaspoon? How much is it?
Yeah, so I don't have a precise answer to that. That's such a great question. I typically will do it to taste, honestly. I don't like to have my things taste too. If I'm adding it to like my tea, for example, the 3 or 4 little things of, I'll show you how small these are, but the little crystals that I'm adding, you can't see that, but the point is the little crystals that I'm adding, um, they don't, um, I don't like to taste it. So I add just a few into all of my little drinks whenever I do it. Now, when I'm making like a smoothie, it actually helps to enhance the flavor. So I'll usually do not even a teaspoon, like a less than a teaspoon into any kind of smoothie that I'm doing. So it's never a ton. It's just enough to add a few extra little bit of flavor or get some of those electrolytes. If I want it to be more precise, obviously I'll use one of my packets. And for example, this one has 480 milligrams of sodium, 99 milligrams of potassium, 40 milligrams of magnesium. I also, in my water right now, I have a magnesium supplement that I use at night. So I oftentimes will layer my nutrients in over the course of the day. So that's why I'm never like, do I want to, when I'm eating, when I'm getting this thing through my food and my drink, I'm never looking for a specific dose. I'm usually just trying to incorporate it into my lifestyle. So it's just something that I always do. right? It doesn't disrupt anything. It's not like I'm going to overdose on anything, but it is a part of how I think about adding nourishment to everything that I do. So it's less precise than just like a dose. If I really want to get precise, then I'm using like a supplement.
Thank you. Any other questions for you guys? I'm sure you guys have questions, so ask.
So I have a follow-up question. I'm dealing with gaining a lot of weight, um, like 20, 30 pounds, and I have a serious gut. So I'm noticing since we've been doing the challenge, I'm seeing results already. I don't know if it's a mind thing, but I really am seeing results. But wanted to see your input. Can you share if anything I can that will help me get my stomach back down? Thank you.
That that okay, so I do have an answer, but I'm going to tell you why this is a tricky question. Because what happens to women, between the ages of 20 and 30, and then 30 and 40, is that our bodies are changing, but our habits aren't. And they're not adapting to the fact that our hormones are doing what they do. And so you keep we're doing the same thing that we've always done. And then out of nowhere, it seems that we get this extra belly. And what's actually happening is that our bodies are starting to lose estrogen, it's starting to lose progesterone, and testosterone. And they're just all kind of steadily decreasing at the age of 35. 35 and above, you're losing it. Well, what estrogen actually does is it helps you with uh produce produce, sorry, what fat does is it helps you produce estrogen. So your body is actually trying to do you a favor by holding on to extra fat. It's like, okay, your ovaries aren't making enough estrogen, so now I'm going to hold on to more fat so that fat can make the estrogen that my ovaries are no longer making. And so that's one of the reasons why we start to see that center tire become created. The other reason we start to see it is because we estrogen actually helps another hormone called insulin. And our insulin starts to go up as we get older. And insulin is a fat storage hormone. It essentially goes around taking any sugar it sees and it stores it as fat and it stores it in the belly. So that's one of the reasons. So understanding why this is happening sometimes can be like the first step. So then the next step is saying, well, what do I do about that? And maybe how does water, how does hydration, how do the different foods I'm eating actually impact this? And how do I need to change my behavior from when I was 20 to 40 to address this? So hydration again is going to be really important because number one, it's important for our hormones. Our hormones need to be constantly flushed out, particularly after they're used. So if you are in an environment where you are constantly being inundated with toxins, which all of us are, there are certain toxins in our environment that are called xenoestrogens. Those are the types of things that are found in plastic bottles or on receipts. If you've heard of BPA, that is a xenoestrogen. So all of these things that we're sort of ingesting into our system that are wreaking havoc on our hormones have to be flushed out some way. And how do we flush them out? We flush them out through our urine or through our stools. So that's one thing that we have to address. The stool part of it is that gut that you're talking about. This sort of, well, I don't know if this is the gut you were talking about, but we have this part of our gut called the microbiome, which are the bacteria in our body. And those bacteria change as we get older, but they also change depending on what we're eating and how much nutrients we're getting and how hydrated we are. All of those things can impact having that extra tire. So what do you do about it? Number one, you do all the things that we've talked about as far as staying hydrated. We want to make sure we're detoxifying, making sure we're getting enough fluids, we're making sure we're getting enough of those minerals like the magnesium and the potassium. We want to make sure we're having enough of those so our bodies can actually function the way that we want to. But then we also want to do some other things when it comes to how we're addressing food. So we want to avoid more of the inflammatory food. So any kind of processed food is going to wreak havoc on you. Anything that's going to drive your insulin up. So things that are really sweet. That's why I don't like the Gatorades or the Powerades, because you don't want to be drinking sugar. If you're a person who has sweetener in their coffee, all of those types of things that you used to be able to get away with have to start to shift. So it really is a lifestyle shift in multiple areas. They're not really hard, but it's a matter of knowing what to do and then figuring out a ritual to add to your lifestyle to help with that. So that isn't a direct answer to say do 1, 2, 3 to be able to solve this problem, because it is multi-layered. That's what my whole entire program is about. So it's a lot more than what I can go through today. But as it relates to hydration, I do really think that making sure that you're not drinking sugar, that when you're hydrating, you're avoiding things that have added sugar in them, making sure you're getting enough of the electrolytes and nutrients and minerals, and making sure that you're changing your diet to one that is more plant forward and away from a lot of processed foods that are so prevalent and so common in our society that we think are just normal.
Any other questions?
And also getting on hormone replacement therapy.
Yeah. But there are
I'm
natural ways to get your hormones in balance, right?
Huh?
Are there natural supplements that you can use
No,
to, no?
it's not. It's so the correct answer is no, but there is a fluffy answer to that, which is, are there things that you can do to help support your body as you lose your hormones? Absolutely. There's nothing, there's not a supplement out there that's going to replace your hormones. Your ovaries make hormones up until you start to go through perimenopause, and then they stop making hormones over the course of 10 to 15 years. And then by the time you hit menopause, you do not make hormones anymore, at least not from your ovaries. And so your hormone levels go to almost zero. And there's not a supplement or a herb or anything that's going to bring that back. But can you do things for symptoms? Yes. Can you do things to kind of help you feel better? Yes, but nothing that will replace your hormones.
All right, so let me ask this question. Um, Actually, this came up in the last hydration challenge about Black women not necessarily wanting to do hormone replacement therapy. Do you get pushback from Black women around that? And if so, why? Why? What are they saying around that?
Absolutely. I get pushback from everybody, because what happened, and I'll give you sort of the brief story to this, but what happened was in 2002, there was a big study that came out that said that hormones cause cancer, and particularly breast cancer. And that study was misinterpreted. And over the course of the past 20 years, there's been tons of research that has said that that wasn't true, but it didn't get the headlines that that original study did. So one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about the work that I do is because we are always, as Black women, the last people to get the news, right? So everybody else in the world was believing this one thing, that hormones cause cancer. We also believe that. As research started to change, we're starting to trickle that information out to white women and to other groups. But Black women are still, plus when we add on our distrust of the medical system, whenever we do hear something like, oh, actually the evidence has changed, our immediate response is, oh, is that really true? Are they lying to us? Maybe they want something bad to happen to Black women. And so we have to contend with the misinformation that came at the top, but then we have to battle our own stuff along the way. And so I do see this. I see this so prevalently with Black women, which is why I created a whole entire program called the Black Women's Guide, because I wanted to be very specific that I am talking to you, Black women. I'm saying I'm talking to you as a person who's been trained and who studied this for decades at this point, and letting you know the thing that I know. And it doesn't mean that you have to do what I'm saying or say that you have to go on hormone replacement therapy. I just don't want you to go not be on hormone replacement therapy because of misinformation. And I want you to know what the benefits and the risks are so that you can make an informed decision for yourself. So that is exactly why my program is called the Black Women's Guide, because I want Black women, because I know that we come with our own set of beliefs about things. And I want Black women to know, oh no, this is for you. Like this conversation is for you. Maybe the hormones aren't for you, but this conversation is definitely for you.
Anyone else? You've got a few more minutes, so please use this time wisely.
I have a question. Hi everyone. When it comes to, I heard you mention perimenopause. So what are some of the telltale signs that you are in perimenopause? How do you know?
Okay, so I have a different approach to perimenopause. I'll tell you the formal way, and I'll tell you my way. Start with my way. If you're 35 and older, you are in perimenopause if you're still cycling. The reason I say that is my definition of perimenopause is that time period before you go through menopause where your hormones are steadily dropping. And we know that women after the age of 35, that is when our hormones start to decline. And what I also know is that that's when I start to see symptoms as a result of that decline. And that to me is what I call perimenopause. What the classic definition of perimenopause is, you'll actually be interested to know that there really was no real medical term, perimenopause. It's not a medical term. This is more of a social term. Perimenopause basically means around menopause. So when we define menopause, menopause is going 12 months without a period. If you are any time before that period, you are peri, you are around it. And so there is no real technical term, but what you'll hear a lot of OBGYNs say is that when you're in perimenopause, that's when you start to have skips in your cycles. And that's a sign that you're in perimenopause. The problem with that definition for me is that women have tons of other symptoms that are completely unrelated to their cycle that are related to the decline in your hormones. So, to be more specific, what are those symptoms? Fatigue, brain fog, depression, anxiety. Depression and anxiety are the big ones for me because I see it all the time, women being diagnosed with depression and being put on SSRIs when really they just needed some testosterone. But joint pain, itchy ears, face laxity, so loss of collagen or stimulation in your face, increased bladder or decreased bladder control, increase in yeast infections, increase in urinary tract infections, decrease in libido, you name it, the gamut of symptoms. And so the way I approach this is I say, listen, if you are a woman between the ages of 13 and beyond, until you've completely stopped having your cycles, the question is, when you come into me and you're having a symptom, what role is your hormones playing in that symptom? The reason this is a very important way to phrase this question is because in medicine, none of the studies were ever done on women because of our hormones. They're like, oh, hormones make things too complicated. So we're just not going to study women. We're going to study men. And because women are little men, then we're just going to apply what we learned about men to women. And so we have to start from a medical perspective, start thinking about with every situation, how are your hormones affecting them? And for me, when you hit 35, I know your hormones are declining. Every symptom you come into me, I'm going to be thinking, what role are your hormones playing in this? So for me, you're in perimenopause, and we just have to figure out, do we need to address your hormones?
I'm really interested because first of all, I didn't have my first cycle until I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
I was told I was had hormonal imbalance like in my 18 between I think ages like 18 and like 21 or so. I was told I had a hormonal imbalance. I historically was a heavier girl growing up, and it wasn't until about maybe I would say 2009 or 10 that I actually had a consistent cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I had it would skip, and when I started losing the weight, I lost over 80 pounds naturally, and then like after that, I started working out and things like that, and then my cycle became consistent from that point forward. And but at the same time, like now I'm almost 50. I've had a lot. You mentioned some of the things I already have, like anxiety. I've battled depression. Those a lot of those different things that I've dealt with, and I'm on right now. I was on medical leave for a while, and I'm on anti-anxiety meds and things like that. But I'm trying to find out, and that now going back to work, I still feel tired. I get good sleep. It's like a lot of things that are happening. I'm like, I know my body, something's not right. And so I would like to do a deeper dive into what's really going on. And I know you're in Atlanta. I don't know if you take health insurance or not, but I definitely would like a deeper dive because I know something is not 100% correct right now.
Yeah, and so I think what you're telling me is the same story that I hear from so many women, because this is not something that we're ever taught. We're never told about this. Where nobody ever talks to us about the fact that our hormones are actually playing a role, and they only talk about it. It's playing a role in, for example, your situation, where it's not in the very beginning where you're not having a cycle. Then they say, "Oh, it's your hormones," and then what do? They put you on birth control pills. And then they ignore your hormones until you want to get pregnant. And if you can't get pregnant, then they say, "Oh, it's your hormones. We should do something." And then they ignore your hormones again if you're no longer interested in having children, until you hit menopause. And they're like, "Oh, only if you have hot flashes is it important." And so this idea that hormones are only important if you don't have a cycle when you're a teenager, if you get pregnant, or if you're in menopause, is really the problem. And so that's one of the reasons why it's important that we're having this conversation about hormones. But the other thing I would say is that and I hear this oftentimes, I know that something's not right in my body. Like, I know my body and something has changed. And I had just seen this thing on Instagram from, I can't remember, Shawnee something or another, the lady who was married to Shaq. And she had made this comment that um, something about how our bodies, or how we are going to change multiple times in our lifetime, and that nobody ever tells us that we're going to change. And she wasn't referring to hormones. She was just talking about what your interests are, the people you want, things that you like to do, the people you like to talk to. But that really rung a bell with me about hormones. And this sense of changing that's happening in your life, when you start to hit certain milestones, your hormones are always playing a role. So this feeling, the anxiety, the depression, the weight gain, the brain fog, all of those are hormones. And if we start talking about it early enough with our children, they will know to expect it. But the reason we're in so much trauma is because nobody told us to expect it. And then once it happens, nobody tells us what to do. And so that's sort of the approach that we have to start to take. We have to start, number one, acknowledging that our hormones are playing a role, and that yes, our bodies are changing, and yes, we feel different, and we're not going crazy, and everything you're experiencing is real. And now that I accept that, and I know that and understand that, what am I going to do about it? And then that's when we get really serious about lifestyle. We get serious about our eating habits. We get serious about our sleep. We get serious about how we manage stress. And we get serious about our supplementations. We get serious about drinking enough water. And we get serious about talking about whether or not we need to be on hormone replacement therapy. All of that has to happen at 35. And if it hasn't happened and you're already at 50, well, we're behind the 8 ball and we need to get in front of it.
Thank you.
How do you, I have a quick question. How do you get ahead of it when you're already 65? I'm way past that point, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't really officially start menopause until I was like 58 years old. Like I was really, yeah. I don't even want to go into it. Yes.
No, but you're lucky.
Yeah. So
you're lucky from this standpoint. So even for my women who are, so the way we think about hormone replacement is usually 10 years after menopause is like the sweet spot. So somewhere before menopause and then 10 years. So you're still in that 10-year window. The problem, that 10-year window doesn't mean you can't start to address these things, but what it means is that we have to take a little bit more, we have to look at things a little bit more closely as it pertains to your risk for heart disease and stuff like that. But the benefit of talking about this even at 65 is, if you remember when I told you, I introduced myself, I said I'm a hormone doctor, but I specialize in hormones and longevity. That longevity piece is where the magic is happening for all of my women who are like, I've been doing this, I've gone through menopause, is there anything else for me? And yes. So the longevity piece is, how do I live healthier for longer? Right? So do you want to be 95 and in a nursing home, or do you want to be 95 and walking around, being able to play with your great-great-grandchildren, traveling, being able to drive if you still want to drive, you know? So all those things are the things that it's time to start thinking about after the fact.
Which is why I'm doing the hydration challenge. But yes, thank you.
Yes, that's right, Lori. You started with your high, and now it's an opportunity for you to go deeper. Here, let me say something to y'all. I'll get off of get on video real fast. One of the things that I think is important, y'all, is that we have to have a vision for our life as we grow older. So this longevity piece that Dr. Peoples is talking about is really critical. Can you imagine yourself, first and foremost, being 90? Can you imagine yourself being 100? Can you imagine yourself being 120? That's the first thing. You have to see yourself in those age ranges. And then once you can see yourself in those age ranges, what you have to then ask yourself is, okay, what do I need to be doing to get there? It's no different than what we talk about with business and, oh, I see this person who has a millionaire, a lot of money. What are they doing so that I could get there? With your health and wellness, you got to ask yourself, if I want to live another 30, 40, 50, 60 years, you're already 60. What do I need to do now so that I can get there? And I don't think we're asking ourselves those kinds of questions. The other piece is we have to look honestly at the people around us. Many of our family members died early because, in their 50s and they 60s. So you don't have examples of longevity around you. You don't have it. And so it's our time now to really start getting critical about what it is that we're trying to create for ourselves and start looking at ourselves and having that vision for how we want to be 40, 50 years from now, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to add that piece. I think that's really important. Longevity, you see, they talk about blue zones and all of this stuff, these people in these different parts of the world that are aging graceful. They're like, oh, 100, you a baby. 195, you a baby. Like, that's nothing to them because they're seeing longevity. They're living longevity. They're in community with other centenarians. If you're not in a community with those kinds of people, 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds, and they're vibrant, they have vitality, it's hard for you to see yourself doing the same thing. So we gotta start shifting the way we think about this.
I just added to the chat, there's a free mini course that I created that actually will take you through an exercise to actually think about your longevity. It's a really powerful exercise. The mini course, I think it's got like 4 videos in it, but it literally will walk you through. And I encourage you guys to do it. It's free, and it's I think will be very helpful as it pertains to what Chef was talking about.